And look at this study from the National Bureau of Economic Research, covered by the New York Times, also in 2016. Quote, when it comes to the most lethal form of force, police shootings, the study finds no racial bias. So based on both academic studies and actual data, there is no systemic racism in policing. It doesn't exist.
That was Sean Hannity on Fox News, of course, days after the murder of Tyre Nichols, using a cherry-picked study in order to support his claim that there is no systemic racism in policing. It doesn't exist, he says bastardly. The study, an empirical analysis of racial differences in police use of force from July of 2017, is one he chose, of course, because it supports his narrative. And hey, its author, Roland G. Fryer, looks like this. He's a black man. Hannity didn't bring that up, I did. Now, we're going to talk about 4-ish of the criticisms lobbed at my dude and his study. Stick with me. Like, for one, Fryer is an economist, not a criminologist. I'm not going to hold that against him. That's just what people have said. 2, the study relied on reports filled out by police officers and on police departments willing to share those reports. And the critique I have with that is the police lie all the time, which is what happened with the murder of Tyre Nichols.
Now, of course, there are good cops, and I would say that's the vast, overwhelming majority, and there is a small majority of bad cops. What we saw in Memphis was horrible policing from really bad cops, but blaming some kind of phantom, all-encompassing boogeyman is not going to solve any problems at the Memphis Police Department or any other police department around the country.
3, the Fryer study examined 1,300 plus shootings between the year 2000 and 2015 in 10 major police departments. And before I continue, it doesn't bother y'all that there was that many shootings in that amount of time in the wealthiest country in the world? Anyway, 10 police departments across the country. These departments, and this may only seem sketchy to me, again, they were willing to share their data? Weird. But Fryer focused on arrest data in Houston, where lethal force might have been justified, according to the police, such as encounters with suspects the police subsequently charged with serious offenses like attempting to murder an officer. But Fryer supposedly controlled for police encounters, so let's focus on that. If I can make this simple enough, I'll split this argument into 2 parts: before the police interaction and after the stop has been made. So, we know that black and brown people are more likely to be stopped by police, but not for the reasons some may be thinking, and I'll get to that later, but for jaywalking, loitering, and traffic stops. And when those interactions can and will be for fallacious reasons, you may be less likely to be doing dangerous stuff to get the police's attention in the first place. See, the Stanford Veil of Darkness study I talk about all the time. Black people are more likely to get pulled over during the day when skin color is more noticeable. With this in mind, the problem that led to a black person being stopped by the police would have been having a darker skin color. No infractions. You see a black person, you find reasons to pull them over. Meanwhile, during New York's stop and frisk policy, white people stopped, for example, were more likely to be carrying a weapon than black and Hispanic people who were stopped. Actually, white drivers stopped by the police were more likely to have contraband than black and Hispanic drivers nationally. Over time, black people were still far more likely to be stopped, frisked, and searched by law enforcement for weapons and contraband in spite of evidence. By the way, there seems to be more data to comb through in New York's stop and frisk era than what Fryer did with his study. And we know that after the stop has been made, no matter how many there are and the reason for them, when it comes to non-lethal uses of force, black people and Hispanic people are more than 50% more likely to experience some form of force in interactions with police. Even Fryer's study admits that. Which leads to my biggest criticism of Roland Fryer's study. It may have only looked at police shootings, and we know that police can kill someone in multiple ways without shooting them, like what they did with Tyre Nichols, George Floyd, Tony Tempa, Elijah McClain, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland maybe. We still don't know what happened to her. Police lie so much. Look, if you're the type of person who thinks black people are killed by cops a certain amount of time because we commit a high rate of violent crime, then you're going to have to show me numbers for black people threatening police with weapons and or attacking during a stop. But we already have the data. With that said, black people are still more likely to be killed when not attacking and not being killed with a rifle or shotgun. And the high-profile cases I mentioned earlier were of people who were unarmed.
White people do get beaten by the police. In fact, far more white people are killed every year by cops than any other race. According to an online organization that tracks this data, 374 white Americans died during police altercations in 2022. If you average that out, a little more than one per day.
Smarter people than me, like in this article from 538, talks about why statistics don't capture the full extent of the systemic bias in policing. Quote, because black and white people encounter the police at different rates to begin with, using population denominators might not lend itself to an apples-to-apples comparison. Being more likely to encounter police means that you're more likely to encounter police force too. Also, with encounter denominators, which is what Roland Fryer used, if there's bias in who gets stopped in the first place, then looking at discrepancies in the resulting interactions won't give you the full picture. This is because of something called collider bias. I'm not going to go into detail about that or something like Simpson's paradox. I mean, I was a journalism and communication major, man. Don't hold that against me. Just know that using one kind of discrimination, over policing, to mask another, the greater use of deadly force against black suspects, is nasty business. There are very much positives to come out of that Fryer study. This is a quote of his. Never mind the fact that, well, if I'm allowed to use a small sample size, violent crime levels in the city did not appear to make it any more or less likely for police to kill people. And besides, if black people would be killed by police less if we commit less violent crime, and white people are killed by police more than black people despite committing less violent crime, how does that work? For Rebel HQ, I'm Jeff Wiggins. My architect knows Japanese. For more from the Young Turks, stay right here. If you haven't seen my video called Cop Instantly Regrets Confronting This TikToker, then you should watch it. Click that link in the description and the Jeff Wiggins hashtag for more of my content.